Good morning, everyone. Looks like people coming in is slowing down. I know that some people had some meetings rearranged, so we are recording this, so people who aren't able to make it are going to be able to follow up and learn a little bit more about us as we go. But we're going to go ahead and roll. So hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. Before we get too far into it, I just want to remind you to please put your name and affiliation in the chat box. We're going to be just making sure we have everyone here and we can reach out to you again later. If you have any technical questions, if you're having trouble with audio or anything like that, you can always chat to Sarah Martin or Sonia Vedral, who are on here, and they'll be happy to help you out. So before we get too far into things, I've got an agenda. Y'all know me. I've got a plan. But before we get too far into it, I want to make sure, even though we've been doing this for a while, that we are all sort of on the same page. One, please make sure you turn away from distractions. I'm not even going to ask you for the full hour. I'm sure we'll roll through it quicker than that. Be flexible, though. We know in this time of people's silly internet and software and updates that you might get disconnected. Just come back in, be patient. Please remember to mute yourself when you're not speaking. We were expecting around 50 people today, so we're not going to try and mute everyone. Just please be responsible and mute yourself. And then use the chat box or the raised hand feature. I'm going to have lots of opportunities to ask questions, but as something occurs to you, go ahead and put it in the chat box and we'll answer when we get to those stopping points. Just in case, just so we're all on the same page, in case you didn't know how, you can mute your line on the lower left. You can use the chat box, like I said, to ask questions. It's right there. Like I said, put your name and affiliation in the chat box, but if you didn't know how to do that, now you can see where you type into it. If you want to raise your hand, for most people, it is now under the reactions, but for people who have not updated, or if you're on a different platform, sometimes you're going to have to go to participants to raise your hand. But for most people, it should be here under reactions. Okay, so let's get into the fun stuff. First, we're going to figure out who's here today. I've got your name and your affiliation, but I want to know a little bit more about you. So as always, I have something interactive for us to do. Then we're going to talk a little bit about how we got here, what our motivations are, where we're coming from, and then we'll transition and talk a little bit about what our mission and our purpose is and our goals. And then we're going to talk some logistics. How are we going to do that? What does that actually look like to achieve goals? Goals are nice, but they don't really mean anything if you can't get there. Then I'm going to give you just a quick update. Many of you have been along for the ride with us through what the cooperative, all the things the cooperative did. So we're going to update you on some of those projects and also what we have rolling out as we move forward in the future as Place. And then finally, we'll end on how to get involved and plenty of time for questions. So Michaela's going to open up some polls for us. We've got some questions we want to ask you, but it's sort of, we want to know what sector you're working in, where you're working at, and then if you've been here with us before, if you partnered with the cooperative before we became Place. And so the poll should be rolling out. Okay, and the first one we're going to have is, which sector are you in? Sorry, Michaela, I can't tell. Are they open? Oh, it's open. Okay.
So we have most folks responded to the which sector are you in question. If y'all haven't put in your response yet, go ahead and throw it in. I can end it in just a moment.
Yeah, and I'll let you just direct us through the rest of these because I can't see anything. So share in between each one because I want to see.
All right, well, I think we've got most folks responding to the first question, so I'll end that. And here are our results.
So can anyone else see the poll results? Okay, can you read them out, Michaela, because I can't see them.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I don't know why it's saying they're sharing. So we have the majority is a tie from the academic and the federal government sectors. Okay, it looks like some people can see them. I'm not sure if it's being weird about that, but we've got a tie between academic and federal government. And then our next most popular is Sea Grant, followed by state government, and then county and local government, with a few folks saying other, and then a nonprofit as well.
Nice. Welcome, y'all.
All right, I'll go ahead and move us to the second question now on where do you work? All right, y'all are pretty quick. Just a few more seconds for the rest of y'all to get in. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and close the poll now and share the results. Florida is our big winner here with 53% of y'all work in Florida. Second is Mississippi at 44%, and then we have Alabama at 35%. And the rest of the Gulf is showing up as well. We've got a tie with Louisiana and Texas at 18%, and then 6% is other. Right, and so our third poll here is, have you previously been a partner with the cooperative? Right, just a few more seconds. It looks like most of y'all have responded. All right, I'll go ahead and close this now. And most of y'all have partnered with the cooperative before. We've got 67% who have and 33% who have not. All right, back to you, Renee.
That's awesome. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. I'm glad to see we have some new faces. So there'll be some things you'll learn along the way today, but I'll make sure that we covered that stuff well. So one other question we had was, for those of you who have partnered with the cooperative, we were hoping that you could give one word that to you described the cooperative. And so Carrie's going to put in the chat here a link to that Padlet. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Padlet, it'll just take you to another website really quickly. And just don't put too much thought in it, just for fun. We want to see one word, what people thought about the cooperative. Passionate, communication, collaborative, productive. These are all good words. Engaging. Connections together. I like these. And if you don't feel like typing, you can also go through and click those little hearts and like ones that you think resonate with you. Oh, lots of love for collaborative. Regional, nice. Locally focused. A partner. Another regional, nice. These are all very good words. And none of these words do I think will change as we become the cooperative, or as we become placed from the cooperative. All right, thanks for that. Thanks for sharing. For those of you who hadn't been with the cooperative before, maybe you can hear a little bit from that, what we were about. But like I said, I think all those words will stay the same as we move forward and become place. So let's talk a little bit about how we got here today. In fall of 2014, NOAA started a pilot program called the Sentinel Site Cooperative Program, or SSC. And this program was focused on sea level rise, and we'll talk a little bit about why later, but there was a lot of things happening around sea level rise at the time, and there weren't a lot of connections. And so they invested in this pilot program across all the NOAA line items to help bring to bear all those disparate pieces to help people on the ground move forward and access sea level rise science. That pilot program ran for about 4 or 5 years, and then they began an evaluation of the program, not just in the Gulf Coast, but in all the US. There were 5 total, to get an understanding of if these locally based partnerships that were leveraging federal assets were making progress and moving things forward. And so with that evaluation, they found there were some really strong things that were coming out of these cooperatives. The connections were very helpful. So a lot of those words we saw, right? Collaborative, productive, moving things forward, locally based. But there were some challenges, particularly around the fact that we didn't live within one place within NOAA. It made funding streams hard. It made leadership chains and ownership of some of these problems and needs difficult. And so in spring of 2020, after we got the, because that evaluation ran for about a year and we got the results back. Once that happened, there was a lot of discussion. NOAA Sea Grant decided to adopt, if you will, the Sentinel Site program. The model worked well, it just needed a home. And so we have spent the past year sort of aligning what was the Northern Gulf of Mexico Sentinel Site Cooperative into what is now known as PLACE, or the Program for Local Adaptation to Climate Effects Sea Level Rise. And so as you'll see, a lot of the things are staying the same, but the important things is that we're aligning ourselves with Sea Grant, both Florida Sea Grant and Mississippi, Alabama Sea Grant Consortium, so that we can sustain beyond the short-term funding that was previously affiliated with the pilots. So why are we going to focus on sea level rise? Why all these programmings in the first place thinking about sea level rise? Well, in the Gulf Coast, we know that sea level rise results in lots of these things, right? Reduced storm drainage. We're seeing examples of this already. Exacerbated storm surge. This is from Cristobal, which wasn't really that big of a storm, but we still had a lot of water in coastal Mississippi. Increased erosion rates across our coasts. More frequent high tide flooding and more rainwater flooding associated with that as well. And then of course, the saltwater intrusion, whether that's our drinking water or in our maintenance, or in our infrastructure, it's a problem. And this has a lot of impacts for people. It has health risks. There are safety issues involved with flooding, as we all know. There are those direct damages that we sustain both as individuals, but also in things we've invested in together as a community, such as our roads and other types of infrastructure. There are economic disruptions, which have immediate effects. The businesses aren't open, but when those businesses are continually interrupted, we also have reductions in services. This is just a generic example of how K through 12 funding happens. And there's a big chunk of that that's local. So if your local businesses are closed, how are you going to get money in? And then of course, there's the more direct services. Can police, can ambulances, can fire trucks even get to your house? And then the use of the things we've invested in, even if it's not destroyed. This is a road. This is a guy on Dauphin Island who just wanted to go to the grocery store and buy some lunch. And he didn't go and spend his money because he couldn't use that road. And then all this accumulates into cultural impacts. I mean, across our region, we have a great sense of place here. We are shipbuilding, we are fishing, we are beaches, we are tourism. And so over time though, these impacts start to wear on us. The point is, and the reason why we had the cooperative and why we have PLACE is that we can change this outcome. We have the information and we're continuing to build information and science and products and tools and services so that we can preserve our infrastructure, our health, our communities. It doesn't mean it's going to look the same as it always has. It may mean that it looks different, but we can work through those changes together if we're proactive. The challenge comes, and the challenge that PLACE is now working on, is that all those things that we can use often come to us like this, a bunch of pieces, a bit of research there, a tool here, maybe a little bit of observing data there. And the point of PLACE is to help people put all these pieces together so people can move forward productively. So I'm going to revisit our mission, right? This was the cooperative's mission. I highlighted some words there. The ideas were improving the integration, translation, and transition of coastal data and information so that both resource managers and community leaders can begin to adapt to sea level rise. So we have a new mission now as part of PLACE, and you'll see there are a lot of similar elements. For one, we're still focused on sea level rise. We're talking about climate changes, climate effects, but it's really right now about the climate effects from sea level rise. We've gotten a little bit more specific about what translating means. We're increasing access and application of the information. We're also enhancing dialogue, and we're fostering action. So we got a little bit more specific about what PLACE is doing to achieve this mission. And then we went ahead and got more specific about how, which is that we're going to work with people on the ground. That wasn't explicitly called out in our mission last time, and it is now, because it's an important fundamental aspect of what we've done and what we're definitely going to do moving forward. The purpose is long. A lot of it we've already talked about. I just pulled out in red here and orange here some things that we got a little bit more specific on as well. Sea level rise sometimes can be this generic term. Oh, it's sea level rise. But we got into the fact that we are addressing the hazards exacerbated by sea level rise. Erosion, saltwater intrusion, stormwater flooding, habitat changes. We're talking about sea level rise, but all the way it changes those hazards that we already live with. Again, there's this emphasis on the fact that we are working on both the natural and the built environments, both of these things synergistically. Our geography is not changing. We're working across coastal Mississippi, Alabama, and Northwest Florida. And then when appropriate, we also will still work Gulf-wide, just like we always have. And again, just as a refresher, this geography wasn't selected to leave anyone out or to make anyone feel particularly special, though we all are. This geography was selected because we expect to see very similar impacts from sea level rise across this region. It has similar topography and similar projected rates of sea level rise. So together that means similar impacts. So there's a lot of things that can be transferred across this region. Also, as part of our strategic planning for PLACE, we now have some clear focus areas and goals. And so the first focus area is on those healthy coastal ecosystems. And we're really digging in here around making sure they're protected and enhanced and restored for those services that we so rely on. And then also making sure that management is able to apply sound science around sea level rise and the related impacts. Another really important focus area, obviously, is resilient communities and economies. That's sort of at the foundation of what we do here. And the really key thing we're digging in on there is making sure that communities have the capacity to use the understanding of changing conditions and the risks that go along with that to be more resilient for overall community well-being. And then a related focus area, one that is inescapable, is that we are working on community workforce and literacy, because we can't help people access these things if we're not building up those skills and bringing that knowledge to bear. And so this is another area where we're working both to make sure that our community planners and our floodplain managers are supported by an environmentally literate populace, but also making sure that the individual professionals across the whole spectrum are able to integrate this information as they move forward. And all that sounds nice. There's always lots of pretty words at the beginning of a strategic plan and the implementation of a program, but now I want to talk about how are we really going to do these things and move it forward. But before I do that, I promised you opportunities for questions. Are there any questions about our mission, our focus areas, or our goals, anything in that realm? And I don't know if Sarah or Sonia, anything was in the chat. Okay. Well, if one pops up, go ahead and drop it in and we'll circle back to it, because like I said, we have lots of time for questions. So our approach. The first thing is that we are going to meet every other year with people on the ground. I'm going to get into the stakeholders and the advisory committee because we're going to have those things. But you can see here from this picture, this is from 2019, the last time we did a partnership workshop. We are going to identify gaps and needs with all of you, making sure that the things we're working on are what are really needed on the ground. And that can be management, research, monitoring, whatever that might mean. And you can see here, I mean, that's two big posters put together side by side. So there's a lot of work still to be done. But we can't do everything all at one time. So then to help focus across those 2 years, we're going to identify priority gaps and needs. For those of you who used to come to in-person meetings with me, you remember lots and lots of sticky dots. It's not a workshop without sticky dots. And so we'll use that to prioritize what we're going to really dig in on over that 2-year period. And then we'll work together to identify objectives, affiliate those priority gaps and needs, and specific actions that might be addressed or might address those gaps or needs, how we can move forward productively. And then finally, I said, we'd meet every other year to set priorities and develop work plans and really go after these topics. But additionally, we're going to meet in the off years, if you will, to review the progress, to network, to identify collaboration opportunities. For those of you who used to come to the full day workshop that we did, you might remember that there was time to dig into what progress had been made so people can stay abreast of what's happening, and also an opportunity to share your own work and to network. So what is our network? Who all is coming to these things who we'll be working with? Well, obviously the foundational aspect of what we're trying to do is serve these stakeholders, right? And our stakeholders, our primary stakeholders, are stewards of the built and natural environment. And this is going to be the people that we really focus in on for translating science, supporting sea level rise action, and really encouraging co-development when research happens to bring people to the forefront. Specifically, we'll have an advisory committee, which is going to be a subset of these stakeholders, and those are the people who come to annual meetings. There isn't a limit to our advisory committee. This is open. It sounds formal, it's not. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more, but really the idea is we'll serve anyone who's a stakeholder, but we want to get people in the room and listen to them, and that's who the advisory committee is. We also have an implementation committee, some of which are on the phone today. I'm not going to start calling people out because I know I'll miss some, but the implementation committee is a small group of dedicated volunteers who meet every other month, and they help facilitate the actions that were identified to be pursued. And sometimes that means bringing resources or networks to bear. Sometimes that means helping to integrate outcomes or outputs into their own networks and their own organizations. And so these are people who really focus and help moving things forward. We also have collaborators. I see again some of your faces on the phone. These are often people who are researchers or can provide technical support or know how to engage specific sets of stakeholders or have existing relationships. Collaborators is intentionally broad because we never know who we're going to need at a table when we're talking about an issue related to sea level rise impacts. But it's a broad, big topic, and I didn't want to leave them out because they're important for us being able to move forward. We also have a management team. This is less the fun stuff and more into the business world of money, making sure we're staying aligned with Sea Grant, making sure that the things we're tackling are appropriate for what we're getting money for and from. And so you'll see there's Florida Sea Grant, Mississippi, Alabama Sea Grant, and also National Sea Grant is a part of this as well. And then finally, we have staff. So these are the people who are just really digging in and working on the ground. Funded through this effort right now is a coastal climate resilience specialist, that's me. But as projects come along and funding's available or we need to increase our capacity, we have an expandable team, if you will. And right now our staff includes myself and then Sarah Martin, Michaela Hemming, Sonia Vedril, and Carrie Schaefer. And then part-time this summer, well, I say part-time, they're working full-time, but for a while with us, we also have Amit and Alexis, who are helping us increase our capacity in certain ways throughout the summer. So you'll see them on here and you'll see them throughout the summer. All right, so before I move on into projects, any questions either about the approach or the mission?
I have a question, Renee. This is Gordon Jackson.
Hey, Gordon.
Hi, the Biloxi NAACP, Environmental Climate Justice, and the Mississippi State ECJ. When you're talking about collaborators and bringing in, and working with people in the community, might that also include maybe being visible at different events that might be located in those communities?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think that an important part of what the cooperative did formally and what PLACE intends to do moving forward is to increase the dialogue, to make sure that these topics are coming up and being discussed for sure. And that means we got to be out there and talking about it.
Thank you.
And I see Obi's question. Oh, go ahead.
Renee, we had a question in the chat too.
I see from Obi. And it looks like Sarah Martin talked about that. Yeah, so Obi, that was identified as a priority, I think more from a preparedness perspective. We hear a lot about saltwater intrusion. We know it's gonna have impacts, but we don't have a good handle on what's already happening and what will happen soon in the Northern Gulf.
Thank you, Renee.
You're welcome. Any other questions? I don't see hands or chat. I'm going to keep rolling, but y'all know me. There'll be lots of opportunity to talk. So now I want to talk a little bit about the different projects we've got going on, what we're closing out, what's going to come with us, and what we're really going to kick off with a bang to help PLACE get its feet underneath it. So we've got some projects that are wrapping up. The first is the Resilience to Future Flooding video, the Future Flooding Project. I think a lot of y'all have heard about this. I have the bit.ly there because if I were to put graphics for everything, the whole slide would be covered up and then some. But the bottom line is we developed videos with different people from the community, elected officials, municipal staff, a whole host of outreach and extension professionals to make sure that the videos we made to communicate about sea level rise and its impacts and solutions, actions that people can take to increase their resilience, were clear and were meeting people's needs. In addition to the videos, we generated small grants and helped support communities on the ground moving forward and filling those gaps and beginning to tackle sea level rise. And really, we wanted to highlight that tackling sea level rise doesn't have to mean millions of dollars of pumps or giant seawalls, but there's lots of things that we can do to move forward, including data collection, planning, things like that. But that project is wrapping up. They'll be closing out at the end of this summer. So that will be the end of that project. Another project that'll be ending before the end of the summer is the Sea Level Rise in the Classroom project. Many of y'all may have heard about this. It had 4 modules focused on the basics of sea level rise, but also teaching high school students and their teachers about natural solutions, natural-based features, ordinances that can be helpful for being more resilient, and the criticalness of community planning. So this project was piloted after we developed it. Again, we built it with educators and a very engaged advisory committee along with a whole team of experts. And so we're very excited that for Mississippi and Alabama, this curriculum is ready to rock and roll. Another project that's winding down, and I say this with some hesitancy because the research part is starting to wind down. That means that the extension work is going to be ramping up. So you'll see this graphic again, but there's a research project that spanned 4 years, 5 years, and really even beyond that. It was part of a previous project known as ESLR NGOM, or ESLR Northern Gulf of Mexico. And so this project produced a lot of information. We're going to have a lot of information about the economic impact of changing storm surge with sea level rise. There's research into the benefit of different management strategies on barrier islands as seas rise. Also hydro-MEM, for those of you who are familiar with that Marsh project, it's expanded for a much greater region in Florida and in Mississippi. There's also a new digital elevation model that came out of it. And I know I'm forgetting about half of the stuff. If you want details, Scott Hagan, I think, is on here. So chat him directly. He'll be able to tell you about all the details of the research. But throughout the past 4 years, we've been bringing several of y'all together with this research team to make sure that that research is scoped and directed so that it can really inform the on-the-ground needs. And so the research part of that is finally wrapping up, and it'll be done by the end of this summer as well. There are other projects we have, not to imply that these are the only 3 we've been working on, but these are the 3 big ones I think that people are really familiar with that are wrapping up in alignment with when the cooperative is shutting down. So then we have some projects that we're going to carry over sort of in perpetuity. The first is maintenance of resources. So Gulf Tree is one of them. I think a lot of y'all are familiar with this. I've also been asking several of y'all for interviews on this topic, but we're going to keep Gulf Tree going. We're going to keep it updated like we have been. There's also the surface elevation table inventory. Sarah Martin's about to roll out an update. We're keeping our finger on that, making sure that people are able to understand what data are available. And then also localslr.org for those of y'all who know about the local projections of sea level rise from Sweet et al. I mean, Obi's here, he was on that paper. As the updates come out, we've got another update from that group coming this year. So we'll make sure that the data there continues to stay reflective of the best guidance coming out of NOAA. There's a project that's a marsh model comparison effort. And the only reason I'm putting this one here is just because we haven't really gotten into the meat of it yet, and it hasn't really gotten off the ground. So it will continue. We will see this happening once place is established and going. This is a project to help us understand what will it take to get a retrospective analysis together to begin understanding which models are really best suited for what kind of management questions. This was a big ask and we've been working on it for a long time. So I didn't want y'all to think that that got dropped. It's definitely going to keep moving forward. And then in general, we have trainings and technical support. This is just an evaluation from a lunch and learn that we do for consultants and engineers, but just know that in general, the technical support around sea level rise science, whether it's designing berms or whether it's looking at planning or just trying to understand what on earth the projections mean, we're going to be here, we're going to keep doing that. There are also other projects that are underway. So Stephanie Smolligan's here. We have our Dauphin Island Adaptation Pathway Project. We're also working to coordinate SET practitioners across the Gulf. There are lots of projects that are sort of going to straddle both. I couldn't list them all, but just know that there is work that we are going to wrap up. We're not dropping things and walking away from anything. But we are going to start digging in on projects specifically for place, and we're excited about this. This is some of the things that we have coming up. So the first is funded by the Environmental Literacy Program out of NOAA. And so I call this sort of our three-legged stool of enhancing resilience across the Northern Gulf strategically. This project has three parts. The first is community connection dialogue. So from that Resilience to Future Flooding project, and from talking to people like Carolyn, who's here, and to Rhonda and Margot, we realized that, you know, in addition to going out and talking to people, people really want to know who they should talk to when we're done. And so we're going to help bring together community, municipal officials with those grassroots organizations on the ground, help everyone get up to speed on sea level rise science, and then understand what action can be taken right then in their location. Another leg of this stool, if you will, is that sea level rise in the classroom project. We had a lot of requests for it across the rest of the Gulf of Mexico. So we're going to be expanding it and making it available to people in Florida, Louisiana, and Texas. And we're going to do that by aligning those standards and also making sure that the examples inside of it reflect the community and the culture and the experiences there, just like we did for Mississippi and Alabama. And so then the last part are pop-ins, and the pop-ins really help tie it all together. So at their face, what pop-ins are just what it sounds like. We're gonna pop into ball games, Walmart parking lots, art festivals, places where people don't necessarily go to think about environmental or about risk or flooding issues. But we need to, in order to move forward around resilience, there needs to be salience of this issue throughout the community. It can't just be a few dedicated people. And so we're going to actually work with those grassroots organizations that are in the connection dialogues and the students and teachers so that we can generate these pop-ins, use the activities, sort of gamify it. We've got an idea for some virtual reality, and then leave those community groups with all of the tools, all of the skills, and all of the equipment to continue doing that. And so all together, we're engaging and informing people who are passionate and ready to take action. We're making sure the next generation understands and is ready to roll, and we're helping to increase overall the awareness of the issue in the first place. And so we're very excited for this project. It builds from a lot of what we've done in the past, but it tightens it up, makes it a little better, and it's a little more strategic. Another project that's underway, just based on some conversations we've had with different groups, is this need to understand the legal requirements as a community around what you need to do when sea levels rising. A lot of people are sort of facing these challenges of roads continually being damaged or covered up in sand or whatever they happen to be facing around impacts from sea level rise, and it's costly. And it's not clear at what point a community can say it's not cost effective for us to keep this road up and what all those implications may be. And there's a lot that goes into this, not only the legal analysis, but understanding who's at the other end of that road or that infrastructure. And so we're starting to dig into that and have those conversations. That project was recently funded through Seeger and its legal program, and we're really pumped for that to get moving. As I promised, the rollout of the N2 E2 data products. This represents a whole new phase of things we're able to talk about around sea level rise impacts, particularly those economic impact data, but also, again, thinking about some of the more practical questions that have been asked within this project. I could talk about this one forever, so I'm just going to keep rolling, but just know we are actively working on different things to roll out for this. And then, of course, the big question mark. We don't know what else we're going to do yet because y'all are going to tell us. Just like in the past, we're not going to go out and guess or determine what we think is best to move sea level rise resilience forward. We're going to have those meetings. We're going to set those priorities. We're going to identify gaps and needs and actions. And that's how we're going to know what else place is going to end up working on. So I'm going to tell you all a little bit about how to do that. But before I do, are there any other questions? Anything else about those projects you want to know?
Renee, I have a question. Can you hear me?
I can, go ahead.
Obey. Yeah. Might be for you and Scott. So when you look at natural and nature-based solutions, which is, I think, great, something we are also exploring here, but do you look at the relative effectiveness of those depending on different storm types and consider hybrid options depending on the storm magnitude. You know, for certain bigger storms, that might not be as effective. So do you look at like combinations of different solutions?
Scott, do you want to take this one?
Sure. Well, the first part of the answer to your question, Obi, is what we've been working on over the last 4 years, almost 5 years now with this current project, natural and nature-based features under sea level rise, is to develop the modeling capabilities and to begin to design our platform of how we can assess the impact that natural and nature-based features have. And we're taking a very large-scale modeling approach. So we're looking at large-scale marshes and then a couple of large-scale projects. So for example, the Apalachicola Big Bend region marsh is being modeled, and then what we are assessing from that are economic impacts associated with it and ecosystem services, depending on the different levels of sea level rise. And the platform with the marsh modeling platform that we've developed, it allows us to, in the future, not within the current project, to demonstrate how we would be able to assess thin layer deposition, for example, from dredging materials. And we're looking at that with this project as opposed to the previous one in terms of ephemeral events. So we're looking at nuisance flooding that's coming from major winter storms that are offshore. And we're looking at individual hurricanes, and of course, just the daily tidal cycle. And then in the Pascagoula Grand Bay region, in addition to the advanced marsh modeling that we're doing in that region, we're also looking at trade-offs in terms of what if the Grand Batour barrier island were reestablished? What kind of an impact would that have on the local tidal flows, on the marsh itself? Is there any interaction between the marsh system in Grand Bay and Pascagoula that is enhanced, or the opposite within that context of reestablishing the Grand Batour footprint? And then a reconnection of the Escatapua River with the Grand Bay. Historically, the Escatapua River was feeding into the Grand Bay marsh system, and when the highway was built, then it was cut off, and that's being considered as being to be reestablished. That connection is considered to be reestablished, and we're going to evaluate that as well. Now, when we're doing all of this, what we're doing is working with the Hart Research Institute at Texas A&M Corpus Christi. And first and foremost, they're doing a lot of level 2 HAZUS modeling so that we can assess economic impacts that are associated with these natural and nature-based features. And what I didn't mention is Davina Passeri at USGS and her team are doing some tremendous work on the barrier islands and looking at the evolution of the barrier islands under these different storm scenarios, and then also, of course, under the different sea level rise scenarios. The ecosystem services work that we're doing is, well, it's more qualitative at this point in time. It's less quantitative than the economic impact analysis work. But what we've tried to do is to establish a path forward where really we can be doing ecosystem services assessments that encompass the economic analysis and also the natural system benefits that are associated with this type of work. Probably a long-winded answer, huh?
Oh, good. Great book. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott. And thanks, Obi, for your question. We're going to keep rolling because the part about how to get involved is next, and I want to make sure that y'all don't miss that. But definitely keep bringing those questions, put them in the chat, and we'll make sure we get to them as we go. And then just please make sure that you stay muted. Sounds like someone's got something going on in the background. Okay, there we go. All right, so now we're going to talk about how to get involved. This is the fun part. So the first thing is stay connected, right? We try and make this as easy as possible without being overwhelming. I think we all have those listservs that we regret signing up for almost immediately. It's not like that. But we do have a new website. It's very, very beautiful. I'm very excited about it. I had nothing to do with making it, but it makes me very proud. And so there's lots of great information here. The first is you can find out some of the things we talked about today, a recap about how to get a hold of us, who our team is, a little bit about that mission plan, the mission, the purpose, and we have our strategic plan there. You also can dig into our work. Like I said, I mentioned, I think maybe 6 or 7 projects. There are many, many more. You can go see the projects that are ongoing, the ones that have wrapped, and the ones that are coming up. We also have publications. This is everything from posters that we've made to documents or guidance or 2-pagers, a whole range of things. We also have trainings that we offer. You saw the evaluation from one of them. We're going to continue to populate that, but we do have several different established trainings that we can help bring to the table. And then we also have a newsletter. I'm going to show you how to sign up for that later. We also have our products, so things that we've specifically built to help move things forward around sea level rise science. You can find all that there. But we also have a whole suite of resources that we've pulled from different places to help people navigate this space and maybe more directly find some of the things they might need around sea level rise. And then finally, we have an events page. It's a Google Calendar. You can add it to your calendar if you really want to follow along, but you can go there and see. We're going to keep populating it. Things that our partners are doing. If you have something you want there, let us know. We'll add it to it. Another thing is that we have Twitter. So we have all kinds of things we tweet about, but if you see these, a lot of it is putting current events into context of sea level rise, such as those coastal flooding pictures that you saw. Also events and opportunities to engage. For example, Pensacola did a vulnerability analysis and they were presenting it to their public. We helped them get the word out there. And then of course, the activities and things we have ongoing, like when we wrapped up those hazard summits with the students who participated in our Sea Level Rise in the Classroom project. And then finally, that newsletter. At the bottom of every single web page, we have a newsletter opportunity to sign up. We just really wanted to make sure, because we are not migrating the old list. So if you were on the cooperatives newsletter list, that does not mean you're going to be on the new ones. You got to go and sign up. But we're going to have a lot of the same good things. We're going to highlight feature stories, something that's been asked for, or case studies. So we're going to highlight partners who've been making progress throughout the Gulf. We'll also have a toolbox highlighting specific things of interest in terms of new tools or updates to tools. Also relevant funding opportunities, new science as it comes out. You just heard about one project that we work on and how much science is coming from that. There's a whole lot more going on. And so we try and help people stay abreast of the relevant science. And then also I call these data connections. They were actually data personals in the last newsletter version. But this is an opportunity if you're looking for a type of data, or if you have a new data set that you want to share and make sure people are aware of, you can host it there. And then another way to get involved is our advisory committee. This is very low commitment. It just means sending me an email and telling me you'd like to be on the advisory committee. We literally only meet once a year at that meeting that I was telling you about. So it's a great opportunity to network. And it's also a great opportunity to help make sure that the energy of this collective group of the network is working on your needs. If they're not on that list, we can't put energy towards it. But if you're there and help us identify it, we can start pushing forward. I'm going to put on your radar, we're going to have virtual workshops this year. I know it's a little rough. We're all tired of it, but several of our partners can't do in person just yet. And so to be as encompassing and inclusive as possible, we're going to go ahead and do virtual workshops. They're going to be on August 24th. And because we're trying to keep it short, we're going to focus on the built environment on the 24th and the natural environment on the 25th. We don't have exact times yet because I haven't worked out all the details of the process agenda, but it will be morning. It will not be more than 3 hours. I'm trying to make it less than that, but that's what we've got going on. That's where we're really going to dig into priority setting. what do you want to direct energy to for the next 2 years? That's what's going to happen at those meetings. We're also going to send updates via that newsletter. So sign up for that too. So you can see when the enrollment comes out and when the opportunities are to register and things like that. Another way to get involved are project teams. So when we come together and we identify gaps and needs, then we develop project ideas or things to do that'll close that gap, we almost always have a project team that's comprised of a variety of individuals, technical expertise, end users, visualization capabilities, and those come from the whole spectrum, right? Everything from federal, state, local, nonprofits, community groups, Sea Grant, whoever, you name it. We've worked with all of them. And so being on the project team is a great way to contribute. And sometimes that means that you serve in an advisory capacity and just provide input. Sometimes that means you're on the ground identifying and pursuing funding streams. And sometimes it means that you're actually helping to implement, helping to generate content or to roll things out or to host meetings. There's lots of different ways to get engaged and involved. And so you can always, adjust to what your schedule allows. But if there's something you're really interested in, being on a project team is a great way to get involved. And also, even if it's not a priority, grab a gap in need you see and run with it. We'll join your project team, we'll help out. All right, any questions about how to stay involved? And then I see Scott had put a question in. So just so y'all know, we do have gomsurge.com and gommarsh.com. Those are resources that help connect research on sea level rise impacts to people who could use them. Those will be maintained. They're going to be integrated into that broader rollout of N2E2 products, because even though it's a different project, it's still kind of all the same thing. And so yes, those existing resources, that's another step that will continue to move forward. Any other questions about the projects or about how to stay involved?
Renee, I did have another question come in that I thought would be good to have answered in front of everyone. Do you know if all of the old Sentinel sites transitioning to the same type of program?
I do not know that. The benefit of being place-based, not meant to be punny, but it kind of is that we are responsive to the needs on the ground and what fits best. And so for our particular group, finding a new home and clearly establishing ourselves as a Sea Grant program was really important. Other Sea Grants that are adopting their respective Sentinel site programs are doing it different ways. Some people are still working that out and what that looks like, but there will not be 4 more places, if you will. Not saying there won't be others. If they want to go with place as well, that's fine. But yeah, everyone is doing it a little bit differently depending on what it is that they're working with. All right, I'm going to keep going. We're almost done. Now this is where, since y'all don't have questions for me, I have questions for you. There's another Padlet. Carrie's going to put it in the chat. And this time we want to just get a little bit back from you about what you heard. I went through it kind of quickly, but do you have any suggestions? What do you hope to gain from place? And do you intend, or are you interested at least in coming to those workshops? And so I'm going to go ahead and move this over here to show y'all. You click this plus button if you want to add a suggestion or what you hope to gain, or if you'll be at the meeting. So I'm just going to give y'all 5 minutes to try and answer some of these questions. That would be great.
Renee, I'll just clarify that if they will be at the meeting, they can like one of those, and if they won't be able to make it, they can like the other comment below.
So just, I hope y'all, okay, yeah. So you see this one, I won't be able to make it, sorry. And then if you'll be there, you can like this one. I see some good stuff coming in. I see a suggestion there about the entirety of Florida. We have been integrating more intentionally with Florida Sea Grant, and they have a climate working action group within Florida Sea Grant. And so we are already starting to do some of that. But yeah, whoever made that comment, if you want to reach out to me directly, if there's something specific, in addition to that, I'd love to hear what you have recommended. That would be great.
Rene, that was me, Obey, and I will try to be in touch with you. You know, I'm very interested in your sea level rise 2-page documents. For some reason, I cannot access them on the site, but I will be in touch with you.
Yeah, that sounds great.
And Renee, if I can speak up, the old website should be redirecting to placeslr.org. So if you try to type in ngomssc.org, it will bring you over to Place SLR. So you should be able to find us, even if you have our old link. The old site will still be in existence on the Mississippi Alabama Sea Grant.org website, though, to clarify that.
I see the comment there about the acronyms for NGOM and N2E2, and that's totally fair. I'm sorry, I just blew past that acronym. So NGOM is Northern Gulf of Mexico. And so that's just an emphasis on where the research is happening. And then N2E2 is a collaboration of a whole bunch of different words, but really the focus there is that this project was looking at natural and nature-based features. So those are our two N's. And then we were looking at both ecosystem services and economic impacts. And so those are the two E's. And so that was why it's N2E2. So we're looking at what nature can do for us and how that translates to services and financial resources. Oh, Todd has a good spot. There is still on the NOAA website, the cooperative, so we'll need to talk about that. Good catch, Todd, thank you. All right, it looks like things are starting to slow down, and I do want to be cognizant of time. Lots of great things that people are hoping from Place. I sincerely hope we can do all of these. Yeah, this is really exciting. And I'm excited to see y'all there. I don't think anyone said they couldn't come, so I hope to see many, many of you there. So that was all I had in terms of presentation. The last thing I was just gonna ask is if there are any other questions, anything else that y'all want clarified before we wrap up for the day. Okay, well, I'm incredibly excited to move forward with Place. This has been a long time coming. I feel like there's a lot of great things that we're getting ready to run with. That environmental literacy project is going to be a lot of fun. The technical support that we've been building capacity for has been really excellent. We've got some exciting research that's wrapping up, and we've got more products coming out and a lot of stuff. So I am looking forward to working with all of y'all, continuing to build relationships, build new relationships. Thank you for all the newcomers. I hope that y'all are able to continue to stay engaged, and I'll give you back 5 minutes of your time. But don't forget, August 24th, August 25th, built environment, natural environment, put it on your calendars. We'll have it on our calendar on the website. Thank you so much, everybody. Y'all have a great day. Thanks for coming. Okay, Michaela, when we close this, I don't know if the chat will go to you or me, but if it goes to you, will you save it, please?
I was going to ask you that. And did you want me to make sure to save all of the poll responses as well?
Yes, please.